it feels like the perfect time for India to host the summit.
Yesterday, there were a lot of headlines, which were, of course, referring to the chaos which was outside the halls, because, of course, a lot of people had come in. The government made sure that anybody and everybody who wanted to get in can get in. It's free.
Today, the single biggest impression I carried back was the enormous amount of youth and students who were entering the place. The fact that the youth of this country are so invested in discovering what AI can do is a huge vote of confidence for where this is going to go. I think what AI is going to enable is capacity to serve at an impossible scale.
Any new technology, any technology as revolutionary as AI will change the job market. Some roles will be automated, some will be augmented. And certainly from our perspective at the bank, digital transformation is absolutely, without question, a job creator. So I think the net story here is one of job creation, certainly transformation in the market. Certainly some people will have to upskill, and an investment in upskilling citizens is going to be important, but this is a net positive.
I believe AI is the enemy of mediocrity. So those who excel in the work they do are not going to lose their jobs.
Sure.
But those who are somewhat mediocre and getting by, they are absolutely under threat.
The summit is showing us also that India can put this muscle on display.
Hello and welcome. You're watching The Mint. I'm Abhishek Singh. Now, with the India AI Summit currently underway, there's a lot of buzz around AI, rightly so. AI is in every room, every conversation. And some of the reasons behind the buzz, of course, include the fact that the technology promises breakthroughs which were not possible earlier. On the other hand, there is a lot of anxiety which is also associated with the technology. For example, the fear of job loss. Now, if there's one conversation you must watch to understand the complete picture, it's this one. Why? Because the AI jigsaw has two important pieces. One is, of course, technology giants like Google, who build the technology that we are talking about, and of course organizations like World Bank, which are pushing this to ensure that it reaches the wider community. And I have, luckily for you, two gentlemen who can talk to us about these two pieces. I am joined by Mahesh Uttamchandani, the Regional Director of Digital Plus AI for East Asia and the Pacific and South Asia World Bank. Welcome, Mahesh. I'm also joined by Krishnan, Chatterjee, Head of Marketing, Google Cloud India. I was at the summit in the morning, and as it turns out, both of you were there as well. So before we start talking about some of the things which I sort of mentioned in my introduction, let's just talk about your experience of it, because this sort of a summit and at this scale hasn't been done before.
I mean, I think it's an incredible opportunity for India, right? If I think of how much India is investing through the AI mission, what's going on in the private sector, there's so much happening here in AI that it feels like the perfect time for India to host the summit. And I was very pleased. I mean, we had standing room only in the panel discussions that I went to. So definitely very well attended, and I think a showcase for India.
Well attended. That's a perfect phrase to sort of describe, because yesterday there were a lot of headlines which were, of course, referring to the chaos which was outside the halls, because, of course, a lot of people had come in. The government made sure that anybody and everybody who wanted to get in can get in. It's free, which, of course, has its own downsides. But that said, what was your experience, Krishnan, of attending the summit?
So if I look at that downside as an upside, today the single biggest impression I carried back was the enormous amount of youth and students who were entering the place. And given India's demographic dividend, as we call it, the fact that the youth of this country are so invested in discovering what AI can do is a huge vote of confidence for where this is going to go.
Right. Since you mentioned the demographic dividend, let me start with the anxieties first. And a little later, we will talk about the breakthroughs the technology promises. And of course, this fear of job losses, which is associated with the technology. So let me start with you, Krishnan. Which are some of those areas?
So, a very hard question to answer, but the way I see it is, traditionally in technology, we have always had this automation and efficiency mindset. And therefore, the dimension in which we think of benefits has been what I call cost to serve. So the price point at which you serve things keeps going down. I think with AI, we are entering a new dimension of capacity to serve. And if you think of capacity to serve, at the most fundamental level, at some stage when the world hits 8 billion plus people, can we feed everybody? You look at India, India has severe capacity to serve challenges in education, in healthcare, in food security, etc., etc. I think what AI is going to enable is capacity to serve at an impossible scale. And if you ask me, that is just going to unleash a massive amount of, job energy within the economy. And in terms of where existing jobs are going to suffer, I believe AI is the enemy of mediocrity. So those who excel in the work they do are not going to lose their jobs, and I will explain that subsequently.
Sure.
But those who are somewhat mediocre and getting by, they are absolutely under threat.
Right. So those who know what they're doing and are good at it, technology is only going to help them become even better, do even better. What's your opinion, Mahesh? What do you think about what AI is going to do as far as jobs are concerned?
I mean, I think there's no question that the job market will change, right? Any technology as revolutionary as AI will change the job market. Some roles will be automated, some will be augmented. I think if I think about a country like India, there are relatively, compared to a lot of advanced economies, there are relatively few of the kind of routine cognitive and knowledge-based tasks that so far AI has shown us are replaceable. So I think exposure to automation risk is actually lower in emerging markets than it is in a lot of advanced economies. I think that's good news, right? I think the bigger opportunity in my mind is augmentation, right? If I think about the challenges that many countries we work with face delivering healthcare at scale, particularly to rural areas, delivering education at scale, particularly to rural areas, AI is only going to help augment the role of teachers, healthcare providers, nurses, diagnostic technicians. These are the kinds of roles that AI can play that are augmenting. But I also think you have to look at this question in the broader context of digital transformation. And certainly from our perspective at the bank, digital transformation is absolutely without question a job creator, right? I think about the rural female artisan in India who previously could only sell her products to someone who's within close proximity to her village. Now she has platforms, digital platforms, because she has access both to connectivity and to payment mechanisms to sell those goods to a much wider audience. And not only can she sell them to a wider audience, by the way, that transaction is creating a digital data trail that is creating a credit history for someone who never before had a credit history. And AI is going to automate the way those credit decisions can be made to reduce the cost of serving a customer like her with credit products. So I think the net story here is one of job creation, certainly transformation in the market. Certainly some people will have to upskill, and an investment in upskilling citizens is going to be important, but this is a net positive.
Right. The crux of what both of you said is that AI will complement more jobs than the number of jobs it will perhaps end up taking away. That said, what about organizations? Do organizations also need to sort of, start working with employees to ensure the kind of upskilling that you briefly talked about can be sort of, brought in, the employees can be made ready, those who are not perhaps at this point in time? And what's on part of the organization that could be done?
So, I agree. I think organizations have a massive role to play in transforming the way people work. So, let's just break down how all of us work, right? And in my book, there are 4 stages. So, we do discovery, we design a way of going about something, we build, and then we execute. I think all 4 of these stages can be significantly transformed. So if you look at discovery today, the amount of research prowess that AI places at your fingertips is extraordinary. So, historically, we have gone into design with incomplete information. You can actually go into design with potentially 20, 30, 40% higher intelligence than you possessed in earlier days. Your build itself can be done to a business case which is influenced by AI, as Mahesh was talking about. And finally, when you execute in the agentic world, you will have a lot of autonomous transactions being driven by agents. But the point is, these four parts are not done as part of a function or a process or whatever we recognize today as work. It'll be done by individuals in the company. You may be in marketing and you may be in finance, in HR, wherever you are. And each of these use cases are manifest even today. The ability of the individual employee to deploy AI at the four stages of work is of critical importance in terms of raising the organization's caliber and competitiveness in the market. That is something organizations need to teach and expect from employees. And once they do, you reach for the sky.
Right. Mahesh, for you, let me add a smaller question at the end of that longer question that I had earlier. And that is, the World Bank, of course, is pushing a lot of, small AI projects, across the world, in India as well. So when you see that, because, it's easier for LLMs to make the headlines, but on the ground, what's really going to make a difference in a country like ours, in a country like India, is perhaps small AI and applications related to that. So in your opinion, what have you seen there? And if you could tell us, what's the direction, where are we going?
Yeah, I first of all, I completely agree on the employee front. Most significant AI use cases at some point require some degree of fluency within a human in AI, and a kind of review process or human interaction with the AI. So upskilling employees to make sure they're capable of doing this and playing that critical role between the technology and the need for a human interface, I think is very important. And if I were a young professional, I would think a lot about deep domain expertise, right? Whether it's in healthcare, education, agriculture. These are things that AI cannot easily replace, that are going to be very important as we go forward. And then coming to your question, there's no doubt in my mind that small AI is going to be crucial for most emerging markets. India is in a slightly unique situation in that it is both capable and investing in large language models, right? But also, I think, has the need to deploy small AI around the country. And if you think about, for example, some of the small AI use cases around weather prediction for crop planting and crop rotation, these are great use cases that, if you put them in the hands of a farmer, are going to increase their productivity, right? And increase their output. And it comes back to the question around food security as well. So finding these use cases, using them in education so that teachers can augment individual student learning plans and tailor learning for students that have either been unserved or underserved by kind of traditional education practices. I think these are the small AI use cases that we need to deploy not only across India, but across emerging markets.
Right. And some kind of public-private partnership as far as reskilling, upskilling is concerned. What has your experience been? Because the World Bank has some projects in Telangana and in other states, right?
Yeah.
What have you experienced there from the point of view of the governments? Are they helping out, state government, central government? What are they doing?
I mean, certainly we look at the perspective of public investment and we realize this is going to be a very small portion of what is truly needed to be invested, right, in this space. And so part of what I think governments and multilateral development banks need to think about is, how do you mobilize private capital with your precious public capital? And one example, and you talked about Haryana or Telangana, is to think about how to use sandboxes, for example, as ways in which there can be a safe testing environment. Solutions can be tested, they can be piloted, and then they can be rolled out at scale. And this is how certainly we're thinking of things at the World Bank, of how to go from kind of retail to wholesale, right? Use things like the sandboxes to test in a very careful environment. And once you have proof of concept, once you have evidence of success, you scale these up in a larger way. And I think that's the kind of, one example of the kind of investment the public sector can make. India also has great examples of things like Aadhaar and UPI, right? That are the public rails on which so much private innovation has happened. And I think, many of the countries I talk to are looking at models like that. They're looking at Singapore's SingPass. to see where can government investment kind of create that magic on which so much private sector innovation investment is going to happen.
Yeah, this digital stack that you were talking about, UPI, etc., Digi Yatra, and so on and so forth. Can India, in your opinion, build something for the world? Because there are a lot of startups which are coming up with interesting stuff. There's a lot of that on display at Bharat Mandapam, hundreds of them, right?
It's already happening. So, DPI that
Yeah.
Mahesh referred to. In fact, we are already working with partners to package DPI in a box and export it to other countries. And I think, I think this is a very interesting point he brought about.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people think that India is not doing enough on the model front, which is fine. What India has done a lot in is the digital public infrastructure,
Yeah.
which harnesses identity, payments, commerce, all on one unified platform. Now, just imagine, we are all aware of the trope, right? AI is ineffective without the data layer.
Yeah.
India is building a data layer at the public scale, at planet scale, which nobody else in the world has. Agents on top of that will be able to do things which are thought to be impossible elsewhere. And that's the beauty. So what this will unleash is entrepreneurial energy and capability to do impossible things just because the infrastructure is already laid out. That is where I think in the application of AI, and I think the government has been saying this for a while, that India will lead in the application of AI. It can be built anywhere, and that is going to be an extraordinary prospect.
Right, yeah, because that leapfrogging is very crucial given, of course, the population that we have and the number of young people we need to create these jobs for. And going forward, a lot of these jobs will come from the kind of sectors that you were talking about, and of course will be powered by AI. So there has to be that element of skilling which we've already spoken about. But that said, that also needs to sort of figure in this entire picture.
No, I agree. I agree with everything that was said, and I think the summit is showing us also that India can put this muscle on display. And again, whether it's the DPI layer that's been built, whether it's some of the new innovations in AI applications, whether it's small AI, all of that is on display this week. And I think many countries are looking, certainly to the India stack, as a model. And I think seeing what India can do with its youth dividend, with its digital dividend, and how to apply that to some of the more vexing development challenges is something the world's going to be watching. I mean, again, I come back to this idea of small AI, right? And you've got systems already being deployed that can read chest X-rays, that can make diagnostic conclusions based on that. You've got, crop advisory services, yield prediction. You've got education platforms like Diksha that can work in multiple languages and really, again, tailor learning for students. These are real development problems that have been vexing problems for many, many years, right? And to start to see movement towards actually bringing AI as a solution to those problems, I think is wonderful. Now, the models have to be trained locally, and I think the ability to aggregate and harvest data, both structured and unstructured, to train those models is a big challenge in most countries, and equally so in India. And so I think watching that unfold and seeing how India handles that challenge will be, again, a model that the rest of the world will pay attention to.
Right. And now let me ask you, I mean, there's a lot that the government has done already. We have spoken about it, right, in terms of investment, in terms of the kind of summit that we're just, looking at right now. But there must be something which can be done, which can be, additional to what is being done already, right? Is there something more that the government can do to ensure that democratization of AI becomes a reality?
I think the AI mission that METI is leading is exactly the right idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are these 5 core pillars. I think it's looking at how to work carefully with the states, because a lot of this has to be done at the local level, to roll out these AI solutions and to promote the kind of homegrown development of some of these AI solutions. I think when we start to think about digital sovereignty and AI sovereignty, I think striking that balance between making sure that the privacy rights of the individual are protected while also ensuring that data can flow freely to power these models is going to be the challenge, not just of the Indian government, but of any government. And I think ensuring that there's some degree of consistency, across the country with as diverse a federated system as we have in India, I think that will be a challenge that the government really needs to kind of dive deep into. Based on what I've seen, that is happening, but that's going to continue to evolve.
Right. What about you, Krishnan? What do you think?
So I think what's very unique about India are the problems. Imagine this, right? India's problems on the supply chain.
Yeah.
India's problem on the healthcare front, food security, etc., etc. Now, if we sort problems which have global ramifications, healthcare is an example.
Right.
If you can solve healthcare for every Indian citizen, that particular solution has enormous implication for any country in the world, especially in the global south. I think working with the industry to actually incentivize those problems being solved at scale through private capital would be a very interesting move. I think at the infrastructure layer, the government's doing fabulous work. Just a little bit more on the application layer to look at how these solutions can move global would be a very interesting thing to look at.
All right. All right. So now I have two quick questions. I mean, you can call them rapid fire if you want to, towards the end of the conversation, because it's been fabulous. We try to cover all the angles that there were. We spoke of augmentation. We talked about democratization. We talked about the fear of job losses and so on and so forth. My two rapid fire questions for both of you. Let me start with you, Krishnan. What are you most excited about as far as AI is concerned? And what is your deepest fear?
So what I'm most excited about, I've already spoken to, the
Right.
art of the impossible. Things that we hitherto thought were impossible
Right.
are now going to be made possible. And that will be on many fronts, including my pet love, which is music.
Right.
And it's interesting that, hitherto you would have thought it impossible that a neighbor of yours could become a global star.
Yeah.
But that's going to happen sheerly by virtue of your talent. As I said, excellence now will get the support that it needs. So very much Iron Man versus Skynet is the future I am looking at. What I'm most worried about is, as agentic AI comes into the forefront, is definitely the whole aspect of cybersecurity and the havoc that can be wreaked if the security posture is not handled well.
All right. Mahesh?
I'm most excited about the people that have been the least served being served. And small AI is principally going to be the mechanism through which we do that. And I've talked about it already, whether it's the students who were forgotten, whether it's the people who couldn't access healthcare, whether it's the farmer who couldn't access the right services, the female entrepreneur who now has a credit history. I mean, all of this, again, are deep challenges that we've been facing for more than a generation in development. And I think we're on the cusp of solving a number of those challenges, creating jobs through that process, and really bringing people on board. And the flip side of that, and very much similar to what was said, is that as we onboard the least served and potentially the most vulnerable people into financial services, onto the internet, we are exposing them to some of the biggest challenges that we all see online. And so I worry a little bit about some of the most vulnerable people being exposed. But I think the tide of history is inexorable, right? And we are heading towards a future that is going to be powered by technology and AI. And that is a net positive. And I think managing the downside risks are a responsibility all of us have to take on.
My last rapid fire question to both of you, and that is, as far as India is concerned, one thing that India can do to ensure that it stays at the forefront of AI innovation, development, deployment, what is that one thing that India can do?
Just invest in solving the capacity to serve challenges.
Right. So throw more money at it.
Throw more money at it.
All right. Sounds like a wonderful solution. What about you, Mahesh?
It's simple. Share seamlessly
Mhm.
and steal shamelessly. So share everything that's happening in India as seamlessly and as efficiently as you can, and we're here to help. with things like an AI use case repository, that sort of thing. Of course, the summit is sharing. And steal shamelessly. When you see good ideas, when you see things that work,
Yeah.
bring them on board, find a way to localize them, and deploy them at scale.
On that note, gentlemen, thank you for helping us sort of, complete this picture, because we started with what everybody's excited about, because all the headlines, all the shows, all the videos that you'll watch on YouTube or wherever else on television these days in India are all about AI. And of course, some of the fears, we also discussed them. So that kind of completes the picture for us. And thank you for helping me do that. Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Krishnan.
Thank you.